Mr. Ray, we're delighted you're with us.
Thank you so much.
Tell us what you found in Burma.
Well, I mean, it's really, really tough. I mean, there's been about 1.5 million to 2 million Rohingya Muslims living on the west coast of Myanmar, and there's been a steadily eroding position that they've had in that country, facing a lot of discrimination, a lot of challenges towards them, and over time, the last 25 years, has been many times when many of them have felt they had to go to Bangladesh, and so they've gone to the next country, their country next door, which has taken them in. But things really came to a head in August of last year, and there was a conflict and military fighting, and then 700,000 plus Rohingya left Myanmar, Burma, for Bangladesh. And so there's two issues. One is there's a camp in Bangladesh, a series of camps. We're close to 1 million total now because of all the people who've gone before, are living in very, very, very tough conditions, like really bad conditions, because it's a camp that's just been put together, cobbled together very, very quickly. And a deeply traumatized population because their departure was as a result of violence. Many of their villages were destroyed. Close to 400 villages have been burnt down. Much violence, sexual violence, other terrible things have happened, and people are there now. Plus, you've got a very precarious population in Myanmar still there. So you put this together, you have a human tragedy of enormous dimensions, and the world has been slow to respond to that.
You called your report "Tell Them We're Human." Why did you pick that title?
Because I think it came out of a meeting that I had with a man who told me his story about how he'd left and how he'd brought his family with him, and we had a long chat and sat and talked. And he was very much in control of the situation. He was a teacher. He could speak reasonably good English. And he seemed very much together. And as I was leaving, and I said, goodbye, and I said, what would you like me to tell people when I tell them a situation? And he looked at me and he broke down and he started to cry. And he grabbed me and he hugged me and he whispered in my ear, he says, "Tell them we're human."
You picked 3 words that have kind of headlined this report, and you're asking Canada to bring presence, perseverance, and patience. Explain what you hope we will do as a nation with those 3 Ps.
Presence, because, sometimes there's a tendency for people to think, well, this is very far away. This is, it's the other side of the world as far as we're concerned geographically. Many Canadians might say, what's it to us? Like, why would we be there? China's closer, India's closer, a lot of other countries are closer, a lot of other countries have stronger historical connections, so why wouldn't they do something? And I think there's a risk that many people will push for the government to do less, to say we can't be everywhere, we can't do everything. And in particular, the countries in the region say, well, actually, we don't really want you around because you come here with all of your human rights talk and all of your talk about religious freedom and pluralism, and we don't want to hear from you. And my view is, no, you're going to hear from us. But we have to decide as Canadians, are we prepared to be present? Are we going to say yes? I mean, I've always thought that the classic example of presence was Abraham saying, "Here I am," and we have to say, "Here we are. Here we are. We're here, and we're here to bear witness, and we're also here to do some good, and we're here to make a difference." And I think if we can do that, then we need to persevere because there's going to be obstacles in our path, and there's going to be much objection to trying to do more. And we also need to be patient because I think there's a tremendous tendency to think that you can deal with this kind of injustice quickly.
Mr. Ray, you're asking us to have presence, perseverance, and patience. in the Rohingya crisis. Specifically, what should Canada do now? We watch, over 700,000 people languishing.
Well, we need to deal with the humanitarian crisis up front. I mean, there's a serious humanitarian crisis that's going to cost close to $1 billion a year to deal with. It's a huge problem, and we have to be part of the solution in a bigger way than we have been so far, because the crisis is not going to resolve itself quickly. Second thing is we need to deal with the question of protecting and advancing the interests of the people who are still in Myanmar and insisting on more humanitarian presence in Myanmar and more international witness to what's going on. And that's something that the government of Myanmar has been very reluctant to do. We need to deal with the question of impunity. Who's responsible for what's happened? There's very powerful evidence of crimes against humanity, and we need to deal with that, and we need to hold people responsible for that. And we need to build a coalition of countries that are willing and able to step up with us. But one of the things that I insist on is to say you can't ask others to step up if you're not willing to step up yourself.
So these are when we see millions of dollars of aid being requested. We're part of an international pool. We have no influence unless we bring our dollars to the table.
That's the hard reality. And when people say, well, where's the money going to go? You say, well, it's going to provide people with shelter. It's going to provide people with education. It's going to provide people with clean water, which they don't have, and it's going to provide people with the possibility of at least stopping the worst part of the deprivation. Otherwise, we're going to lose a lot of lives, and we're going to lose a lot of people.
We have Canadians who have relatives in those camps. There is a Rohingya population here in Canada, but it wasn't just the Rohingya Muslims. There's 135 ethnic groups that are getting cleansed out of Myanmar, including several different groups of Christians. At the root of this is a hatred problem.
Yeah, it's an issue about identity. And belonging, and who are you, and where's your home? And I think a lot of countries, and Myanmar is not alone. Burma's not the only country facing this, but there are a lot of countries where there's a struggle underway to figure out who belongs here, and there's still a lot of fighting going on inside Myanmar. There's conflict in the far north. There's conflict in the north or northeast. There's conflict in the northwest, and there are a lot of groups that are feeling very, very vulnerable. There's also a kind of a peace process that's supposed to be underway, and there's more that we need to do to deal with that. But one of the problems I think we're all encountering is that in this populist age that we live in, it's not difficult for demagogues to push buttons and to use racial or religious or ethnic identity and conflict as a basis for saying, well, we don't want those people here, we don't want these people here. And there's a huge issue around hate speech in Myanmar, which actually, Mr. Zuckerberg admitted on Facebook, saying Facebook has been used as a platform for hate in Myanmar, and he says he's going to do something about it. We'll see if he does. He should.
It's an astonishing precipice we're on with the Rohingya. This could be another multi-generation refugee trap. You've got a line in your report which says, it's like we're living in a world without adult supervision. What do you wish for? What do you think we should
Well, I come back to my point is we can't, for a long time we always thought, well, some other country's going to come in, somebody else is going to fix it. The UN will fix it. Well, the UN is made up of countries who are basically us. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees goes around with a begging bowl saying, give us money, we need money to do our job. And so we have to recognize as Canadians that if we're serious about being part of this world and dealing with a refugee crisis that now includes up to 65 million people, we have to be present, and we have to be there, and we have to make a difference. And we have to become the adults in the room, because maybe nobody else is going to step up, and we have to say, well, we're stepping up. We'd like you to come with us. We're more likely to succeed if we take that leadership role.
All right. Bob Bray, Special Envoy on the Rohingya crisis. Thank you for being with Context.
Thank you very much and appreciate it.